Hard work, real talk, no shortcuts. I'm Joseph Cabrera. This is American Operator. All right, team. We are here with the Driskels, fresh in from, I guess you can call it the East Coast. It's on the East Coast, but you wouldn't call Florida East Coast, right? It's like its own thing.
Yeah,
It's unique for sure.
it's its own deal. That's for sure.
So we got Jeff and Jason here. Gents, really do appreciate y'all coming in. And more importantly, I'm excited about kind of some topics that we don't really get to talk too much about this show. One, just kind of how sports, whether it's in the pro athlete space or collegiately, like how that kind of established foundations for being a good business owner and operator. And then just kind of also some of the war stories y'all have had just kind of along the way and kind of where y'all headed. So stoked to get into it. Let me ask the first thing just out the gate. They always say, like, going into business with family, don't do it. Yet, from the get-go, I can tell you all have just some kind of chemistry. How did that happen? Was this, like, something you all had to kind of really discern, or was it, like, no question that, no, we're doing this thing?
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So, I had a very similar light bulb moment that a lot of people in this space have, right? Like, oh my gosh, normal people can buy these businesses that have, 7-figure earnings. Didn't know that was a thing, right? Did a bunch of research, like, is this actually a thing? Is this an Instagram thing, right? Is there some legitimacy to this? So in one of my off seasons a few years back, I was talking to Jason and, told him how I've been spending my days. And I said, hey man, like I've been doing a bunch of research, talking to a bunch of people that are doing this at a high level, from, buying a franchise to independent sponsors that are taking down 9-figure deals, right? Like everybody in between. Very high level people at all pieces of the puzzle. But I said, hey, I want to get into this in some way, shape, or form, and I don't want to wait until I'm done playing. Not so naive to think that I can own and operate a business while I was playing football. But I said, hey, I want to get some exposure into this world because when I'm done, whenever that might be, like this is what I want my career path to look like. And I caught Jason at the right time, kind of, told him, all the things that I'd uncovered over the past, 6 months or a year or whatever it was. And he said, hey man, well, let's do it. He got the light bulb moment. He did his own research, had difficult conversations with his wife and, decided that, it was best for his family to get out of his day job at the time and go look for a business together. And we kind of outlined the rules of engagement, right? Like, hey, are we going to talk about this at Thanksgiving, right? Is that off limits? Do we have to book meetings to talk about, business stuff? But it's been great. Like it's been one of the, pleasures of my life over the past couple of years to work with Jason every day.
Yeah, agreed. We spent a lot of time talking about like, how could this go wrong for us, right? Like, because
before getting into it.
Yeah. Honestly, I remember I lived in Austin at the time, and I would go into our office, my corporate job. I would go in early at like 6, and we would do hour-long meetings. And the first however many meetings we did, they were just talking about like, how can we not mess this up for our families, right? And we want to be friends. We want our kids to be friends. We now live super close to each other. We want to be able to hang out on the weekends and do whatever. And we spent a lot of time talking about how can we make sure that however this goes from a dollars and cents perspective, that our family is fine at the end. So it was we spent time, but well worth it. And I think we definitely had bad days, but I think like that groundwork that we sort of set in place, super helpful for us.
Yeah. And there's no real way to like put that in a document, right? Yeah. We have obviously inherent trust.
Yeah.
Being brothers and having kind of similar paths in football and sports and everything like that. Like you have to trust each other.
Yeah.
And it's based on trust. Like I said, there's not like a formal, hey, we can and can't do this. But we did have those hard conversations early.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that the hard conversations later aren't as hard as they otherwise might have been.
What are like some of the rules of engagement that you feel like, man, has really worked well? Like, what are like off limit things or time bound things? What are those things?
I think we've always just sort of approached it, and it's a trust thing, right? Like there isn't roles, but Jeff, as you'll probably see in this sort of deal, is much better in certain things. I'm much better in certain things. So that sort of bifurcation helps with sort of divvying up the workload, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is just trusting that, this is our future, professionally. And like, he's invested, I'm invested, and we're always going to be invested equally, right? Like that is the goal. Like it's, we didn't want to get into the game of like weighing different roles or different contributions or whatever. It's like we would just always sort of want to be in a place where things are down the middle. Which there's days where Jeff would say he feels like he's getting the short end, and I'm sure there's days where I feel the same. But I think when we look at things from 30,000 feet, it works out that way. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add on that.
No, we if somebody calls somebody on Saturday and has a business question and the other person doesn't answer, like that's fine. If somebody calls at 2:30 on a Thursday, like you should be pretty available to answer that question.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just working on kind of that level that is that's worked well for us.
Yeah, it sounds like you are. It kind of is counterintuitive to folks to like prioritize the brotherhood first before the business, but it's probably what is the unlock there to be able to kind of keep yourself probably sane and at the same time kind of enjoying each other's company. Do you find that as y'all are operating, where are the natural things that y'all gravitate to from a skill set perspective, like on the technical side of things?
Yeah.
How do y'all divide that labor up?
Yeah, Jason's definitely the brains of the operation. He just said bifurcation or something. I've never heard that word before.
Don't ask me to spell it. Don't ask me to spell it.
I'd never heard that word before. But I guess like I don't know if role or superpower is getting indoors. That if I didn't have the NFL shield or in Florida, the Florida Gator logo carries a lot of weight. I played quarterback at the University of Florida. I've played 9 years in the NFL for a bunch of different teams, and that gets you in a lot of doors. That doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to do business with you because of that.
Yeah.
But it does get us indoors that we otherwise probably wouldn't be able to get into at this point in our careers. But yeah, I love going to lunch with folks. I love having conversations. I love talking on the phone with people. And Jason, I don't want to say he's the opposite of that, where he doesn't like doing that.
Yeah.
But he's going to be the one that's making the models. He's going to be the one that's asking the difficult questions. If there was a good cop and bad cop situation, I would be the good cop, right?
Yeah.
So we do have complementary skill sets, and I'm more of a interpersonal relationship, qualitative, type of person, whereas Jason is more on the quantitative and ask the hard questions.
Yeah, I would put it this way. I studied engineering in college. I'm an outgoing engineer, maybe not like a superstar business development guy, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm interpersonal enough. I like a team dynamic, but if you think about like things charging your battery or draining your battery, Jeff probably gets charged up by things like this. And
A lot of folks, yeah.
I'll be very tired tonight, right? Like that's sort of how I think about it. But yeah, I think Jeff hit it on the head. And of course, my background is in corporate strategy, so naturally I gravitate to more of the modeling. And yeah, I like to be the bad cop. Sometimes it's my wife gets on me about it all the time, but that's where I gravitate, I would say.
Nah, sounds like a powerful 1-2 punch. I think that's what we find with like folks that are trying to get in the owner seat. They're usually missing one or the other. They either have like they know the business inside out from like a DNA molecular perspective, but they can't like get enough trust with the new owner to like want them to even pick up the phone. And then on the other end, you get some folks that are great at getting through doors, but are like they're buying a bad business because they don't even know how to evaluate the thing. So I do think in this world, it seems like a 1-2 punch. How has sports been something? I mean, it's obviously been core to both of you. I'd love to just get y'all's perspective on like how that, as you reflect on your journey with the pigskin or otherwise, like how has that either helped or maybe hurt you in this world? I'm assuming it probably has just helped,
Yeah.
other than getting doors open.
Yeah. Sport teaches you so much. When you're in it every day, you don't realize the value of the soft skills that you're learning. So I mean, there's probably a bunch of college and pro athletes out there that have had similar thoughts that I've had over the years. What the heck am I going to do when I'm done, right? They'll go to a barbecue and their friends are talking about, what they're doing in work and the modeling and the spreadsheets. And, we feel lost in those conversations because, our high level discussions are about cover 2 defense, or, hey, like we're going to run this play action pass and we're going to find the sweet spot in between the safeties and the corners. So that's our high level know-how, but the soft skills I think athletes don't put enough weight towards how valuable that is in the workplace. So I think just the teamwork that you naturally develop, the hard work, the grit, the determination, especially to get to, the collegiate level or the pro level, like that started when you were a little kid, right? You in the business world, you hear about the 20-year overnight success.
Yeah.
That's the same thing as everybody who just got drafted a couple weeks ago, right? They went from not having much money in their bank account, NIL is different, so they probably did.
It's different.
To hey, some of those guys, you probably just got a direct deposit of $25 million. Overnight success, no. Those guys were working, from they were 7 years old, not knowing if it was ever going to pay off.
That's so fascinating. How do you talk with, I mean, if you don't mind like just getting into that more on the soft skill side, I think you think athletes and you almost think technical, right? Not necessarily in the math form, although some of it can feel that way. What are the soft skills you guys are referencing? Is it more just like how you get a team to like be cohesive, or what are those things that come to mind?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest one is teamwork. And I have like a kind of a pet peeve where businesses call things a family. Like I'm not a big like the business is a family guy. I'm a big it's a team. But people I think underestimate, especially athletes when you're in the moment, what it actually means to be on a team, right? Like you have to understand if you're on the scout team that you're not going to play. For me, it was on Saturdays, but you're not going to play on Saturday if you're on the scout team. But you are helping someone else that they're going to further your program, and maybe next year, the year after, you'll be the person playing it. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't have that skill, right? It's about them. They want it to be about how can I do my job as easy as possible for my personal success today, and not thinking about things from a big picture. And so I think sports teaches you from a young age that it's not all about you. Even if you're the quarterback of an NFL team, it's not all about you. And I think I really do think that's sort of a lost skill in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, just about every team that I've been on, in the NFL, they talk about we want great teammates because great teammates make great teams. So yeah, I mean, there's got to be something to that in the business world as well.
Yeah. What do you, when y'all are playing either in the NFL or in college, what are the things that, as you look back on it, that any leading indicators personality wise of other teammates that make you go, that person's going to be dependable or that person's going to be a good teammate? Like what about them makes you think that?
I got one, and it's a small thing. It's like in college, I'm sure it's different at every school or whatever, but for us, we worked out super early in the morning and we met super early in the morning.
Yeah.
And you're in college, right? Like for better or worse, you are. But people who are going to show up on time every day for 4 or 5 years, that person's dependable, right? Like they might not know anything about anything, but you know that if you need them to do something at a certain time or whatever, they're going to be there. And those are like the little qualities that don't seem like much probably, but when you look at, again, taking a step back and you get into the real world, that's actually a harder skill than you'd think, showing up on that. So I think it's little things like that.
Yeah. And this might answer your question. It might not. But I'm going to go down one of those rabbit holes that I talked about. So my daughter's 6 years old. She is in gymnastics. It's it's a one-man sport. You're out there by yourself, but she's on a team, right? There's 15 or so girls that are in practice at the same time as her. They compete at the same time. I said, were you a leader today? And she said, well, what does that mean? And I said, what do you think leadership means? She says, well, like maybe if the coach asks us to do something and my teammates aren't doing it, like maybe I'll say something. And so, well, that's one way to do it. And she said, well, what do you think, Dad? And I said, well, whenever I got on a new team, what I always wanted to do was in conditioning drills. They do conditioning drills in gymnastics at 6 years old, which is crazy. So she was able to understand. I said, nobody likes the conditioning, but what Daddy did was I made sure that I won all the conditioning drills. And some of that was like ability, but some of it was want to and drive and like showing the team without saying anything that like, I believe in those coaches that we're doing the right thing here. I believe that us training together, rowing the boat in the same direction is a worthwhile task. And when you do that, time and time again, that's where leadership's developed. And yeah, so doing the same thing over and over again, doing the hard things, I think makes a great teammate. And that's where, the leaders of any team or organization emerge.
Seems like, I mean, you both kind of nailed something that like you both kind of took me back in my time in the service. Like it is the small things. It's the things that I think we can get fancy about leadership. That's where I think a lot of guys and gals get a little bit astray. Like as they get into the owner seat, they kind of are doing the really sophisticated things well,
Yeah.
but they're not. Like if you have, especially like a trades group, they're there early in the morning in their trucks and they never see you. Like that's kind of a, yeah, sure, you can run a successful business, but you expect your guys to be out there on their trucks ready to go to the first call at 6:30 in the morning. And they don't ever see you at 6:30 in the morning, even once in a while. It just kind of makes you wonder, like, I don't know. I was just, it makes you kind of set the tone a little bit different. When you guys are thinking about like how, as you think about translating some of those skills on teams to the world that is the private sector, what's kind of some of the most challenging pieces? Because I feel like as you grow up in sports, you grow up in the military, you kind of like are around a little bit of a system that encourages like that kind of,
Yeah.
call it aggression or whatever,
Sure.
like that tenacity. How do you do it in this, like on the private sector side?
Yeah. I don't know if this is the right answer. It could be a bad answer, but what we've done sort of at Barry Kingston and Ellie is we do, weekly or every other week, all hands meetings. And it's definitely a white collar business, right? So people are in the office working together. But the first thing we do in that meeting is we have core values. There's 6 of them, but the primary one is be a great teammate. That's all it is. But we start the meeting with every person that's in that meeting has to give someone a shout out on the team for something that they did. And look, like we have weeks where it's hard to give shout outs, and and I find myself not getting enough of them. So I gotta look into that. But that's what we do. And it's nothing, it's nothing super, right? Or extraordinary, right? And I think for me, it was just a way to have, the team from our highest level accountants to sort of our admin staff recognize each other, right? Because it's a team that makes the building go and makes the business go. And I think it's things like that I've elected to try to do to just sort of build that camaraderie. And it also takes discipline, frankly, to like, oh crap, on Tuesday morning at 8, I gotta have a shout out, because if not, we're gonna sit here and look at you until you have one, right? So
Yeah.
that's one little thing that we've done, which I think has gone well, at least if you ask me.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, man. I think it's gosh, it's such a just being consistent about that, even when it's hard, it's tough. The other day it was y'all we had this like stretch of just rain here in Texas. It's been nice for the cool weather, but it was just pouring. And so my since leaving the service, one thing I've always promised myself is never stop your kind of morning physical regimen. Like I always do it. And for me, it's incorporating a lot of running in the morning. Just a lot of good thinking happens there. And what kind of makes you smile, I get up and kind of like flip my legs on the side of the bed and it'll be raining. And my wife will go, stay dry. And so maybe like she knows I'm going to still get, because I
Yeah.
promised myself I'm going to
Sure.
do that, even though I don't like,
Yeah.
who likes getting soaked necessarily. And I think it is those small things that you stay consistent with that kind of drive you along the way. Jeff, like in the locker room, are there things that make you, like, are there kind of rituals or things that you keep up with just to kind of make sure that you're staying true to yourself or just setting a good example for other folks?
Yeah, I mean, I think you referenced it a little earlier. Like, we're brought up in these systems that like kind of force you to do things a certain way, and if you don't, you'll kind of get weeded out.
Yeah.
But I think that stuff shows up at least at the NFL level in the off season. In college, you're with your team year round, right? Like after the season, you have a couple week break, you're right back into training. The NFL is a lot different than that. When you're done with the season, boom, you're home the next day, couple days after the season, you're home, and um, you can hire a trainer, you can work out on your own, you can throw, you can not throw. Like no one's watching you, right? And that's a change from college to the NFL. And that's where a lot of people can either like separate themselves in the off seasons or they'll fall behind. And it always shows up in training camp. Guys aren't as sharp on their skills, or maybe they'll get a soft tissue injury. That person probably didn't work out enough or run enough, or, there's some unfortunate things that happen that are out of people's control. But I think it's the off season. I think it's when no one's watching. You see those Gatorade commercials all the time where guys are training at random parks, and then it's wee hours of the morning or late at night training. Um, it's just stuff like that, right? Little by little, each and every day. If you can continue to do what you've been doing since you were a little kid, but now there's no oversight, that's when you can, make jokes. And the same's true in anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like it really is. And, our business is a systems business, right? Like it's an accounting firm. So I don't want to say repetitive, but there is a lot of system in place. And it is, to Jeff's point, it's doing this stuff that seems monotonous, that keeps things running smoothly for our clients, right? And it is like that. I think it's a good comparison.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your business,
Sure.
sales business for a second, at least this one here. Tell us a little bit about it, but really also just kind of thinking through like how y'all arrived at that being the thing you wanted to buy first out the gate.
Yeah, I think arriving to it is probably a story all in itself. But I think the short of it is that we knew about this whole ecosystem. We learned it over time, and so we knew that there was opportunities to buy small businesses. Right, we knew that was a fact, and there were some things that we didn't like. There were some constraints about how big the business could be, et cetera. But we weren't necessarily setting out to buy an accounting firm in Western Kentucky. Right, like that's definitely not what happened. But what did happen was, through relationships that Jeff largely built, we got connected with a broker and ultimately got, this business came across our desk, for lack of a better phrase. And, obviously me being the bad cop, like we talked about earlier, like you got to understand.
Bad cat, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Over me. I think it has to check certain boxes, or we're not going to overpay for an asset. It has to, be something that I can realistically operate myself and feel comfortable doing that. I'm taking the personal guarantee on the debt. So, I got to feel super comfortable. But then ultimately it comes with very frank conversations with the sellers. Like, what is your guys' expectations? What's going to be the thing that doesn't work for you guys after close? Because in a business like this, I wanted them to be around for some time afterwards. And so, it's conversations like that were had, and, ultimately, sort of the cream rose, I guess. I think that's, one way to put it at least.
Yeah, and then like, how'd we land on accounting and bookkeeping?
Yeah.
We kind of started with the person, and the person in our first acquisition was Jason. What are you comfortable in? What are you not comfortable in? Jason, after college, he was in corporate finance and strategy, and then he moved on and worked with a venture-backed company in a white collar setting in both of those companies. So he said, hey, well, I've been around white collar folks for years now. I kind of know how they think. I'm a white collar guy myself, engineering background, or engineering education. Let's go find something with a white collar workforce, because I think I'll be able to relate to them better. I think I'll be able to recruit that workforce better. Okay, well that makes sense. So let's start with the operator, and then, hey, like, there is going to be some risk here, right? You mentioned the personal guarantee. How risk averse are you? How, non-risk averse are you? Well, he's, like I said, engineer by education, so relatively risk averse. You want someone with pretty sticky clients, right? And that's accounting, right? There's very little churn. I don't know what the stats were from this past year, but
Yeah.
you can say this.
We do like 1,500 or so, returns at a given year. And so obviously we pull the numbers on all this, and you would think the churn would be like 100 returns. It was like we touched 1,498 this year. Last year, I think we touched 1,496.
Get right here.
Yeah, and
That's good.
It's from a business and metrics perspective very encouraging. But I think, to Jeff's point, right, it's just an industry, especially in a small town in Kentucky, which is where our firm is, where you provide a really good service at a really fair price. It's a pain to go find a new accountant, right? So I think that hypothesis turned out to be very true.
Yeah, we backed into it based off of the operator's preferences.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we're doing it at Four Pillars as well. We're finding the operator. What do you believe in? What's your background? Do we believe in it as well?
Yeah.
If so, we can get behind that and look for an opportunity that matches your skill set. Because if we think that you'll be excited about going to work every day, there's a higher likelihood of a good result.
Yeah, no, I think that comfort factor, you kind of want to have the one thing that you can, at least one thing,
Yeah.
you can walk into the new team and feel like, I may not know this business as well as you, but I know this really well, right? And that's kind of what establishes confidence. How's it working out?
Largely, I think things have gone really well. Obviously, there's ups and downs, right? There's good days and bad days, and I was not, I'm sure you've had people on the show that were sort of entrepreneurial from, the lemonade stand that they opened up on there. I was not that, right? So I've learned that sort of being an entrepreneur, the bad days are worse than they were before, but the good days are much better.
Yeah.
And we've definitely had a mix of both. But I think, largely speaking, it's been really great. I think the one thing that I maybe discounted going into it was like how much I would enjoy working with the people that, work at my firm, right? It's an unknown, right? They're talented, they do the job, the business is performing well, whatever. But, I likely would have never met these people, right? I'd never been to this town in Kentucky before we did due diligence. And, I'm fortunate enough to have 15 employees that I like to work with, which I think is really cool. And, they've embraced me. One of the people that we bought from, I've been to his house multiple times, and not to talk business, just to hang out and have barbecue and bourbon. You're in bourbon country there. So it's stuff like that. It's the stuff that's not on paper. And obviously I'd be in a different mood if we weren't making our debt payments and all that fun stuff, right? So the business is performing well, but it's things like that that I think have really been the enlightening part of it, maybe is the best way to say it.
Yeah. Do you like the, so it sounds like sounds like it's a good, what did it teach you about, what was something about yourself that you learned that you didn't, other than maybe the risk averse things or whatnot? What were the other things that you were like, whoa, okay, I didn't know that about myself, good or bad?
Yeah, I think I had managed people sort of in a corporate environment, but they're much bigger companies, right? So, I think part of me has to, especially early on, I spent a lot of time just learning what everybody did, right? Needless to say, but I think I had to take a step back and trust the team was going to do a good job, right? And really, I had no reason not to trust it to begin with, but I think innately we come in and have this, stranglehold or angst or whatever you want to say. And I found myself having to look myself in the mirror a lot and just say, like, you got to trust that they're doing their job well, and they are, right? Like, and I can tell you over whatever 16 or 17 months now, they are doing a good job. But I think that was something that I sort of had to learn. I wouldn't say the hard way, but it definitely took me some time.
Yeah. And probably even like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Especially since it's known new, or what
Totally.
those things
Yeah.
are. For both of you, but maybe a little more in like Jeff's world. I'm curious, like, do you look at, like, how much are you checking in on like your brother's kind of like state of mind? I guess he's kind of maybe in the day-to-day running it and you're continuing to go out there and like open more doors and those kinds of things. Like, what's that relationship look like with checking in on kind of his health and well-being, so to speak, while y'all are also probably looking for the next thing to kind of look at and invest in?
Yeah, I mean that's a challenge because we do have the two separate entities going, right?
Yeah.
Jason's got to make sure that the lights are staying on and that he's doing what he said he was going to do. Whenever we bought the accounting and bookkeeping company, servicing those clients well, treating the employees right, growing that business while also spending some time with our four pillars group venture. But yeah, I mean we have conversations all the time. Most of them are informal, right? The quick little check-ins. We live 10 minutes down the road from each other, so we're in front of each other almost every day, if not every day. But yeah, I mean it comes up in conversation all the time. Most days he's doing well, some days like not as good, and the same goes to me, right? So yeah, those conversations happen all the time, and good or bad, they're quick snapshots in time.
Yeah.
It's the constant up and down, and it's taken me some time to really understand that. You talked about what you discover about yourself to Jason, and was ready in case you had asked me the same question. But I've been in this big multi-billion-dollar companies for the past 9 years in these NFL teams, and no matter what you do, I was a backup quarterback, during my career thus far. And, if maybe I didn't put the right amount of effort in a certain day, the team was going to keep going. Like, no one would really notice most days, right? And there wasn't a lot of days where I did that, but there was definitely some days where I didn't give my best effort. If I did that in our ventures, you feel it. It'll be obvious. You'll feel it. So, in a much smaller company, like, it matters. Everything matters. So that's kind of something that I've discovered, and I probably knew it, but now I actually feel it.
You feel that, yeah. Do you find that to be, both of y'all coming from big organizations, so to speak? Is there a reward in that, like having that kind of tactile feel with the effort, so to speak? Like, you get that kind of instant feedback loop.
I don't know about instant feedback. I've had to create internal scoreboards to make sure, like, I can look back at a week and say, hey, like I did good or did bad, right? Like, and it can't be, did I, close on the deal this week, or did we, move the needle 10%, this week, or did we get X amount of clients this week? It's the inputs, right? If I did the inputs and I consistently do those inputs, there's going to be outputs down the line, but it does take time. You never know when those are going to surface. But I had to put those in place because, there's times where it feels like you're spinning your wheels with no fruit. But then when the fruit comes, all right, now I can look back and say, hey, these inputs were what got us here.
So yeah, it makes sense. I'm just curious, man. Y'all just like even talking to y'all right now, it just seems like they're um talk about like growing up. I'm curious, like y'all just seem tight, and you would expect that out of brothers, but not all brothers are that way. But you also kind of have, even though y'all kind of live different careers, so to speak. It seems to me that y'all have kind of a shared value system set of ways of kind of thinking about things. Like, was that mom and dad instilling that in you? What is that underlying foundation that kind of got you to where you're at?
Yeah, I, I don't want to speak for Jeff, but we can't. I will, I guess. We can't speak highly enough of our parents. I think our dad was in the military, so he was a 20-year Navy vet, and I think, for better or worse, he expects discipline, right? But it was in a way that was constructive, I think, for us. And Jeff and I are different. And we were even more different when we were younger. I was not the kind of guy that wanted to give you any discipline, and I wanted to let you know that I didn't want to do it. But I think our parents figured out a way to sort of instill the big picture values in our lives. And, I think looking back when you're little at sports, right? Like that was the thing that taught us a ton of discipline, I think. And obviously Jeff made a career out of it. I was fortunate enough to play in college, but, I think, if I'm answering the question, it's our parents, right? And they just did a really good job of ensuring that that foundation was, super strong.
Yeah. Jason mentioned like the discipline around sports. Um, my dad, he knew that we were both really talented in sports. Knew that there was like legitimate potential down the line for college and pros. He knew that we both loved it. So he pushed us to do it every day.
Yeah.
We definitely didn't want to do it. And when I say every day, I mean every single day after school, batting cage, yeah, gonna go throw immediately after school every single day.
It's just you two?
Just us two.
Okay.
So the discipline piece was huge. But for me specifically, um, like humility was something that was huge in my high school kind of time. So just for some background, without talking about humility, I'm about to pat myself up there. I was the number one rated quarterback in high school in the country. Could have gone anywhere, offers from everywhere. And when I got drafted, first, second round in baseball, decided to go football. And my dad did not let me get the big hit. He wouldn't let me. And looking back on it now, 16, 17-year-old kid who doesn't have that type of guidance, the Nick Sabans of the world, Urban Meyers of the world, the Les Miles, all these big time people coming in there to court you, and your peers seeing you in school, getting taken out of class and doing all these wild things and the spotlight and on the cover of magazines. Like, if you don't have that guidance and somebody like keeping you grounded, it can get out of control quick.
Yeah.
And he never let me do that.
Why did that come out? Was it him just like checking you if you did grow too far, or was he?
It was never verbalized. It probably was. Don't get the big head. Like I didn't make that turn quick.
That has to be.
But yeah, it was again. I mentioned it earlier. It's the consistency. He didn't care if I had 50 offers. I've had chores to do it. Right? So yeah, he treated me like his son, and that's kind of how it went. The expectations didn't change, and forever grateful for that, because that would have been it would have been tough to navigate as a 17-year-old with no direction.
Yeah, that level of like foundation is so hard. When you're thinking about your time currently in the NFL, and just while we're kind of on that same line of thinking, like with Jason kind of grew up in playing football and then going in the corporate world, you kind of get a little bit more exposure to everything as boring as like your 401k plan, all the way to like just being responsible with your money and your career and where you're going to next and 25 years from now and all that stuff. But I imagine the NFL, I mean, they make movies about just guys just playing their hearts out, and then at some point there's like this brick wall they hit, and then you're off on your own. Was there someone who told you, hey man, like look a little further ahead in this career, or Like, how come it seemed that you kind of had an awareness around it where, like, it seems like so many athletes just, man, fall off a cliff?
Yeah, I mean, it's financially, anyways. It starts, I went to a big school, went to University of Florida. Um, they start educating you really, really early. They give you the horror stories of guys that made, 20, 30, 40 million bucks and spent it all and they're broke.
Yeah.
So we got the horror stories pretty early. Um, and that kind of was like, hold on to it, don't spend it. And then for me personally, and you're also told NFL stands for not for long, right? The average is 2.5 years. If you make it past that, you're lucky. It could be not playing well. It could be, coaching staff doesn't like you. It could be injuries, whatever it might be. A lot of things got to go right to last even 2.5 years. So that was always in the back of my mind was, hey, I'm going to have a chance and I'd like to play as long as possible, but it's going to end, whether it's 1 year, 10 years, right? But I got cut after my first training camp. So right when it started, before my first NFL season, I got cut, and I wasn't cut for long. I got cut, and the next day I got picked up by another team, and kind of went through that season. And then after the season, I kind of reflected on my rookie year and said, man, that was kind of crazy. And I got cut before my first year. It could have been over before it started. And I was always like on the cut line. There's 53 guys that make the roster. I was probably, in the bottom 10 of every roster that I've been on as far as guys that were going to make the team. Um, so I always thought about, hey, what's next? I want to be prepared in some way, shape, or form without I was always, and I still am, super dialed into doing well in sport, and I'm not taking away from that.
Yeah.
I'm just using another piece of me to prepare myself for down the line. Early on in my career, I thought I was going to be in medical sales when I got done. So I spent my off seasons getting to know people in Orlando in the medical sales world. A couple years went by, started wanting this passive income, that people were talking about in the locker room. So I got into real estate. Spent the off seasons, doing flips, single family buy and holds, investing in, other people's deals, thinking that, hey, I'm going to be a GP in real estate when I'm done. Decided I don't want to go down that route with my professional time when I'm done playing. But always spent the time to at least figure out if this is what I want to do. So that when I am done, I can transition more smoothly and at least know what I want to do and know what I don't know rather than don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, so it's kind of almost like a blessing almost at the beginning that reality hit fast. Because then you kind of immediately go, okay, this isn't forever. I better kind of get my head on straight and kind of start thinking about that. Was that like just from your seat, like as you were kind of observing that going down, did y'all have conversations about, what medical sales, corporate America, what that looks like? What was happening behind the scenes?
No, it's funny because earlier you asked about our relationship growing up, and
Yeah.
I would say that our relationship was always friendly, but Jeff was a high performing athlete. I was a high performing athlete, to a different degree. And so we were never like in the same circles, right? Like we would spend weekends where my mom or dad would be with Jeff at a baseball tournament and one place in Florida and, the other parent and me would be somewhere else. So I wouldn't say that it was something that we were talking about ever. I think, and going back to Jeff's earlier point about like one of the joys of this whole thing is being able to spend a lot more time with Jeff. I think this has really been the start of that. This is a couple years old now, but this has really been sort of the start of that. And, I think I couldn't echo the previous point about it being a joy and like one of the highlights of this whole venture. So
From y'all perspective, like what would you tell folks out there who are considering maybe becoming the, because they know, I think there's a lot of folks that know it's hard and know that weight is all on your shoulders. Why would you say that it's worth doing? Y'all both experience kind of the bigger organization type stuff. It obviously sounds like this is kind of what life looks like for y'all's future, for the foreseeable future. Why is it worth doing?
yeah, I think, and I think it's personal. I think for different people it'll be a different reason. For me, I always sort of wanted to be the person that, I get to bounce ideas off of people now, but I get to make the decision. And like I can rest easy at night knowing that I make the decision. And I make bad decisions. I make wrong decisions. I do it every day, I'm sure. But I think that's sort of been the thing that's been encouraging and super cool for me is like, that's what I aspired to, right? Once I got into corporate America, 'cause there was a CEO of a big company or something. I just wanted to be the guy that I got to make the call.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if that's like the quarterback in me, which is kind of a lame little quote there, but like, I like to make the call. And, I like to think I'm smart enough to ask smart people that work, I work with and, work for me to make sure that I'm making the best decisions possible. But I think it's a really freeing feeling to be the end all be all, when push comes to shove. So
Is that I want to get Jeff's thoughts on it too, but like, do you feel like some people, were you kind of born that way? Because for some folks, it would give them a terrible amount of anxiety being like, wait a minute, I'm going to get the call?
yeah,
No, thank you. You make the call.
it's a good question. Maybe a little bit. It could be the sports thing too, and like I don't know. I can just I have anxiety when I don't feel like I'm in control of my own destiny. Right, like
You're in the passenger seat.
that's right. I want to be driving, and it's probably not for everyone in that regard, but for me, it definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah, to piggyback off Jason's thought about controlling your own destiny. I've been cut or fired,
Yeah,
like 8 times, right, in the past 9 years. I want to be in position to where that, won't happen again. So there's something to controlling your own destiny, good or bad. But for me, like what gets me excited behind like the very real opportunity to make life-changing money and wealth for your family is doing something different every day. I can look back on my last 9 years and you can tell me the day of the week and the time. I can probably tell you like exactly what I was doing. Um, and there's good parts of that, but there's also like it gets monotonous. But I look back on the past, year and a half or whatever it's been, and some of the highlights, like just sitting here right now. If we were doing something different, we wouldn't have made this trip to Austin and be hanging out here. We went on a due diligence trip for a roofing company that we're set to close on here in the next couple of weeks, and we had a guy come in who's going to be on the cap table, and we made the 45-minute drive from Orlando, and we talked shop, and we got wings, and had a couple beers, and drove around town, scoping things out. Jason referenced going up to Kentucky with one of the guys that we bought from and having beers in his garage. All the seller calls that I get to do, meeting people in random industries that I'd never even heard of, have to chat GPT. What does this company actually do? Like just learning about the ways that people make money is fascinating to me. But also learning like that these folks that have been in their business for 30 years, they're so concerned about their clients and they're so concerned about, their workforce. It's just huge. So it's the people and you get to do something different just about every day if you want to. And there's the days where, I'm sitting there on the phone all day, which I don't love, but that's also part of it. So yeah, just, doing different things, getting in different rooms. Every day looks different is something that's a lot of fun for me.
Talk to me about, you both kind of mentioned a little bit about the owners themselves, the people y'all are buying from. Dig what you said about it is like literally their blood, sweat, and tears going into this thing. They have this like highly personal attachment to it. It's probably why they just don't want to let it go to anybody. Tell me just kind of about like how y'all been able to kind of earn the trust with those folks. Like how have you been able to get in there and really get them to understand like, I am going to take care of this thing for you. Don't worry. You can be proud of it.
Yeah, no, for me, it's doubling down, right? Their names are still in the building, it's, but I think during due diligence, it's like there's a little bit of soft skill, but it's just being honest with them, right? Like in our philosophy, is probably different than a lot of others, which is like, we're not going to do anything drastic here, right? We heard their concerns during due diligence. They voiced like, hey, recruiting has been a big challenge for us, right? We have a really good business, we have great clients, but like getting the next generation of great accountant has been very tough for us. And that's a great thing for us to hear because that's what we could do really well, right? Like I can go to a university that's an hour away and give a TED talk, which I've done twice, right? Like I can do those things and I'm probably a little bit more approachable than the people that are selling. So I think there's an element of just being honest, and it goes both ways, right? Them being honest with us about potentially what's not so easy or what's not gone so good, and us being very honest with them about, our intentions with their business after the close. And, you know, with any sort of business deal, there's an element of trust. Sure, you have purchase agreement, a bunch of legal documentation that says this, that, and the other, and I can't read them anyway, right? But like, if we lied going into it, day 5, whenever the lie came out, it was going to be a big deal, right? It wasn't going to go well. And the same thing can be said for them. They were super honest with me about the things that worked well and didn't work well. So long way of saying, I think it's a trust thing, and that's built sort of during due diligence and then lived out, once the dotted line is signed.
Yeah. And then on the potential seller side, I've had a lot of seller calls, seller meetings, and I've gotten very comfortable with the fact that 10 out of 10 times I'm the dumbest guy in that room or on that call. And I don't try to act like I'm not. Like I tell those folks straight up, hey, I do not have the industry expertise that you have. Like I don't. And I think that level of humility and honesty goes a long way. That hey, we're just dudes, right? We can say we're this group, we have this much money, we've done this amount of acquisitions. But at the end of the day, we're just dudes that are trying to buy very quality businesses from really quality people. And I think that goes a long way, for at least the people that we want to buy from. There's some people that don't see that as a positive, and those are the people that we don't really want to do business with.
Yeah, you kind of need that puzzle piece needs to fit, and yeah, I think that's right, and I think there is a power in knowing that this stuff's so nuanced, not only by industry, but like literally by the human who ran the thing. It's just so different. I mean, we see these guys at like, we'll see these operators, and one of them will be going 2.5 years trying to find the right thing. And then you get this other guy who just like started thinking about doing this 3 weeks ago, and he's already got a deal online. And they ask him, what was your pro tip? Because I don't know, we both like bird hunting, and it just kind of worked out. And it's like, wait a minute, that was your hack?
Yeah.
Dude, I didn't know it was a hack. I just recognized like, but to some owners, they wouldn't care if you share the same hobby. So you just kind of like don't really know what those things are. And you find that just the ad bats kind of get you those reps in there.
And you can only be yourself, right? Like, I think that's the thing that we've tried to lean into is we can just be ourselves, be honest, be open. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay, right? Like that's something that we're just going to be okay with ultimately. So
paint the picture for me. Like, what's the daydream look like? Like I don't know, fast forward 10, 15 years from now, like what's all this look like? What's it all for?
I think we have two entities, two ventures. So I think the daydream is different for both. So I can start with sort of the accounting firm. I think I alluded to it earlier, but like I spend a lot of my time recruiting new people. And I manage the business from 1,000 miles away, and I try to go at least, 1 or 2 weeks a month. But I'd like to continue to lean into hiring really, really quality people and making it a great place to work. I think one of the hypotheses, if you will, going into the acquisition that has been wrong so far is like the ability for remote employees to do as good of a job as people on the ground. And so like, the focus going into it was a very broad recruiting net, and now it's much more, regional. And so, I think the 5-10 year dream is to continue to recruit really, really talented people. And, it's an hours business, right? And so if we can continue to hire really good people, we can continue to find clients. And I think, ultimately, like with any sort of accounting firm, you can start to talk like geographic expansion or go like an industry expert, if you will, or like find a niche. But I think my dream is 1 year from now to have at least 1 or 2 more really talented people. And, the year after that, it'll be the same thing. And I think if I'm doing that year over year, it'll be good outcomes for sort of me, yes, but also the business and our clients.
Jeff,
Yeah, and I'll kind of take it from the 4 pillars perspective, and it's going to be very similar to Jason because it's centered around people. We're getting ready to close on our first acquisition as independent sponsors, and I am so excited and nervous because we're working with an unbelievably talented guy that's been in industry for 10, 12 years, was ready to do his own thing. Didn't have the want to, the means, whatever, to go do it on his own. And we're helping him, buy a company that does 7 figures in bottom line earnings. Like that's life changing, for him, for us, for anybody who's part of that venture, that's life changing. So in 10 years, if we can look up and say, hey, we helped 20 or 30 people become owner operators and have life-changing outcomes, that's the dream for me.
I mean, it's funny how like that, it's kind of like you reach a stage in your life where like the enabling others to be great. I imagine that also probably comes from natural sportsmanship and, kind of that natural coach you need to kind of get there.
Yeah, we're getting a piece of the pie now.
No, it's not, you're not just giving it away. How about the family dynamics? I got to imagine, man, like this isn't easy. I not got to imagine. I know it's not easy work. How do you get the family kind of on board with the grind that it takes to do what y'all are trying to do?
Yeah, for my wife personally, she's seen the grind that it takes to get to where I've made it in football. We dated in college. She understood, all the workouts that I had to do. She was never the one that's saying like, "Hey, practice got over at 4. Why aren't you home at 4:15? Or why didn't you call me back?" Whatever. Like she gets that innately. Like if you want to excel at anything, like you have to put in the time. And she understands that that's no different in any venture. So like the full support of her has been huge. Um, she asks me a lot of questions, but they're not questions that aren't encouraging questions, right? It's the questions that are trying to help understand what I do. How can she help me better? But the encouragement that I've seen from her is, you know, there's no like end date. Like if we don't get X amount of revenue by, the end of this year, then I got to go do something else. Like that's never been a topic of discussions. She trusts that I'm going to make the best decisions for our family, um, for the long term. And, I mean, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah. Same with you, Jack.
Yeah, I think largely yes. I'm a little risk averse, like we talked about. My wife's an attorney, so she's probably even more risk averse. She doesn't look at our.
You an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think in a similar vein, but obviously different. When I first started at a school, it was at a large 3G Capital owns Burger King, Popeyes, Tim Hortons, and that's where I worked. And it was definitely a culture at that time. It's been a number of years where it was a 60-hour week kind of gig, right? So I'd get in early and get home late, and I think my wife understands now that like that's just what it takes to be successful in anything. And so similar to Jeff's point, there's no strings attached, right? She trusts that I'm doing everything I can to make our household and our family be in a better spot ultimately. And I think she sees, frankly, like the joy that I have, right? And like Jeff, like I have a 4-month-old, like we talked about sort of before the show, but
Yeah.
Jeff sort of sneaks into the house now and comes up to my office, and we have little sessions, but he has to sneak in because his baby might be asleep. And I think that's, I think from my wife's perspective, she probably sees that, right? Because I probably am different now than I was before we started, doing this.
Yeah. Part of my 10-year dream, like you mentioned earlier, is we can look back and remember when we first got going and I had to sneak up and
Exactly.
when Jackson was just a little guy.
That's right.
Maybe one of these years we'll get digs like this.
And the 1-year dream is to get a better AC unit in that office, so we have to sweat so much.
Dude, for what it's worth, I had no idea how big or small it was, man. As far as I was concerned, oh man, he's just he's in a call booth.
Yeah, that's what it was.
That's exactly it.
I did get me. No, I think there's so many folks. The reason I asked, and I think it's a good perspective. Man, so much of this journey can be, you got to buy the right business. You got to do the diligence. You got to meet all that stuff. But gosh, you see so many folks that get into it and without kind of the right household partnership strength foundation, man, a good thing can go bad, or vice versa. A thing that's kind of mediocre can go really great if you got somebody really kind of encouraging and kind of bought in. Do y'all have any like family boundaries that you're just, kind of like y'all's ROE? Is there things within y'all's family that you keep it so that like, all right, dad, husband, they're getting after it. I can accept that. And that's, they're doing their job. They're earning their keep, so to speak. Are there things that you kind of draw a hard line on to make sure that you're giving family the time that need?
I mean, I have 3 kids, 6, 4, and 2. They typically wake up around 7 and try to do, an hour or whatever before they wake up, and then whatever's going on, shut down, right? From 7 to 7:45, I'm getting them ready to go to school. Some days I'll take them to school and they'll, get going with my day after that. But with 6, 4, and 2-year-old, there's soccer, there's gymnastics, there's all these things. And I'm not gonna say I go to all of them, but I go to most events, right? There's a lot of school functions. Like that's part of the dream of like doing your own deal is like you don't have to check in with the boss and say, 2 weeks before, hey, my daughter has graduation. Is it okay if I'm out for 1 hour? Like you don't have to do that. And that's a big reason why a lot of people get into this game. But as far as like familial boundaries, like I think our families understand it takes a lot of hours, and some weeks it's more hours than others, and sometimes on vacation, like gotta answer a couple emails.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, like I can't go to that graduation without having to check in.
Yeah, I mean, and for what it's worth, it is a weird thing, right? Because before we started doing this in my job, that when I went on vacation, I would check my emails, right? So it's not like the work demand for me has changed a ton. I think the cool thing now is Jeff's kids practice soccer like a 3-minute walk from my house. So at 4:45 on Thursdays, I get to go to my niece and nephew soccer practice, and that's fine because I know that if someone on my team calls me at 6 in the morning or 7 at night, any day of the week, if they need me, I'm gonna answer, right? And so like it goes back to sort of making your own schedule. And my big thing is like I'm always available, and I just go back to the trust thing. I trust my team's not gonna bug me at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night unless it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're that. Your family just kind of has to be bought in that this is just who you are.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of understand that, which can be tough for some folks if they don't.
Yeah,
Like that's a hard
but
fatal threat.
I have a home office, and my door is glass, and I did that on purpose so I could kind of see out into like kind of the living room, to kind of have some visual interactions here or there when they're out there. I'm in the office, but that sucker is like handprints, drool on it. There's countless times where I've been on calls and they're banging on that door and they're, blowing strawberries on the glass. I'm doing one of these trying to
So good call, bad call. Good call, bad call on the glass door.
good call, but I don't know where I was going with that, but
No, you're gonna like the mouth on the thing. Yeah. Well, that's kind of far. I mean, I think so many. I don't know if it's our generation or maybe it's just you get to a point where you stop giving a hoot. I actually love being on a call and you can tell somebody's in their home office and they kind of have to like take a break real quick because they got their little doing something. I can't be mad at that. Like I just like, man, that human's got a life of his own. Yeah, you need to go figure this out. And let them go take a break. Man, y'all been awesome. I got one thing left on my mind, and I think it probably would be great to get y'all just kind of independent perspective on that. Maybe start with Jeff. What's something that you think most folks from the outside looking in wouldn't appreciate kind of about the life of being a pro baller, a pro athlete? And I'll ask kind of the same thing on Jason about being a day-to-day small business owner. I always think there's a lot of, I call it like instant truths out there, which is not true at all. And so what's something that like that life you think most people have no appreciation for, but this is how it really is?
I think people don't have appreciation for the 90% of the league that isn't super high paid and a celebrity, right? Most of every sports league are role players and not, the people who have generational wealth off of a couple contracts and they're the starter at the XY position. So I think it's a lot more challenging on a day to day mentally than people think. Because when I was a little kid, I would see, NFL players getting in trouble for like DUIs or doing whatever. I'm like, man, they're in the NFL. They're so rich, right? Like, why would they ever do anything outside of just play sports? Like, there's a lot going on up top for not for every player, but specifically for the guys that aren't the high paid guys. It's hard to stay in the league. You're always worried about getting cut. What's next? So there's the balance of like, I got to be in this with 100% of my, mind, body, soul to be able to do well, but also like it's going to end, and just not knowing when that's going to happen is a constant battle that I don't think anybody really solves. So, just the mental challenges behind being in and staying in the league are difficult and really even hard for me to like verbalize.
Yeah, it's kind of all. Yeah, it's probably you kind of have to probably like be in that world to really appreciate it. I imagine that doing this with your brothers probably helpful
Very.
to kind of have this like okay out of my periphery here.
Yeah.
I can see what another like.
And a lot of people also think that, you know, if you're a pro athlete, you have no other interests or likes, right? They think that it's like all consuming, and in a lot of ways it is, but you know, you can go down any roster in the NFL, 53 guys. There's going to be a bunch of different interests. Some guys are into poetry, some guys are into art, some guys are into, you know, real estate investing, whatever. So we're just normal people who happen to be really talented and had some really fortunate breaks. To be able to make it at that level. But we're all just dudes that have our own likes and dislikes.
Indeed, that's great, man. And you guys like what would you say for folks looking to get into this life? You know, there seems like a lot of pros. What's the thing that you wouldn't think you didn't even appreciate until you got into the seat?
Yeah. I think for me, it's going to like, just go back to people. I think like, you know, I'm sure everyone's due diligence stuff's all different, but like we didn't really get a ton of exposure to the team, right outside of the sellers until you've committed, right? For me, I've committed at least 10 years of my life and a bunch of dollars and all the fun stuff. And, you know, I think that's the one thing that you have to like embrace. You're not really going to know until it happens, but like to really lean into enjoying the time you spend with people that you may have otherwise never engaged with, right? Like that has been so cool for me. I have what I would call now friends with people that I work with that again I would have never met in all likelihood. And I think that's not something like I talked about the instant, you know, whatever, like you're not going to see that on Instagram, right? And I think that's just been such a rewarding thing that it's hard to quantify in a lot of ways. Yeah,
It's exposure to a whole group of folks that
Yeah.
otherwise would have been non-existent. Jens, I appreciate all you do. Thanks for the combo today. I think that I think if anything, at least what I took away from it all is just kind of like the groundedness that is, and like you can still be high performing folks and still kind of be rooted in that humility. And that's a really tough, it's called balance to strike. I think that is the thing that I see over and over again. You get really sharp, talented, high speed folks and have a hard time in this world of small business kind of humbling themselves to kind of really like doing the work that it needs. So we appreciate y'all flying in all the way here from Florida there and giving us we feel good when we get folks like you here in office. And also for folks watching this thing, they probably are looking for the first time this whole new get-up looking different. And I probably my team was like, we're not gonna just have one, we're gonna have two the first. So you got to figure out
hey, really test it out.
yeah, really go fit great. So at a time we get folks that come in like we're gonna have two people. I'm like, look, we had two football players,
right,
man. So I think they're so thank you, gents, for coming on.
Listen, yeah, for having us. This is great.
Thanks for tuning in to the American Operator Podcast, where we celebrate the backbone of America, small business owners and operators like you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss out on more of these stories and insights from people who keep our community strong. Until next time, keep building, keep operating, and keep America moving forward.